Last week, time to shake it off because we've got our Week 7 episode of FCS All-In, and it might be better than anything in your wildest dreams. Or maybe I just threw in a couple of Taylor Swift song titles in there because we may or may not talk about her on the show as well. Welcome back. I'm your host, Alex Eshelman, and along with talking about Taylor Swift, we'll also have Sam Herder and Craig Haley break down Week 6 as well as our Game of the Week. And you'll also hear from our guest picker that's two-time Super Bowl champion from the New York Giants, Gary Reason. So suit up. It's time to kick off the show. I've got my two co-hosts with me now. That is Senior FCS Analyst of Hero Sports, Sam Herder, and Senior FCS Editor of Stats Perform in theanalyst.com, Craig Haley. Guys, we talk about it every week, but player from Week 6 that stood out to you, Craig, I'll start with you.
Some good ones. I'm going to go with Dylan Kelly, the linebacker from Albany. 23 tackles against Towson, which was the FCS season high. He's been in double figures all but one game this year. He forced a fumble and recovered it. He was just dominant. I just think he was the best player of the week this past week.
How about you, Sam?
I'll go with Mercer wide receiver Ty James. He had 14 catches for 285 yards and a couple of touchdowns receiving versus ETSU. There's a lot of really good wide receivers in the SoCon, and Ty James is certainly one of them, not only in the SoCon, but in all of the FCS. I think he has NFL potential written all over him, and, that performance just kind of showed that off a little bit more.
Expanding beyond student athletes, let's talk about teams. What was the storyline, the game, the team that really stood out to you, and who would you give your game ball to there? Sam, I'll start with you.
I'll give it to Central Arkansas. For about three quarters, I wasn't looking all that great for UCA. They were down 30-6 against SEMO. They eventually climbed back and win 38-33. So we erased in that fourth quarter deficit of 30-6. On the flip side, this is the third heartbreaker in a row for SEMO. This is actually the third game in a row that they've given up a double-digit fourth quarter lead. So, got to feel bad for that locker room for SEMO with these tough losses. But at the same time, Central Arkansas, they got momentum, grabbed momentum, and made a huge comeback to get the win.
When you win the battle of the FCS mascots, it stands out. So I'm going Youngstown State Penguins with that big win, 31-3 over Southern Illinois Salukis, who were number 6 in the nation at the time. Just a great performance all around by the Penguins. Just good to see.
Penguins, Salukis, we love those two mascots here on this show. Last but not least, guys, it's the out-of-pocket game ball question. And it goes along with the big national storyline that I think it's pretty hard not to follow if you're not following sports in general. Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce, we get the picture. What song of hers would you give a game ball to? Sam, let's start with you.
So I'm a bit of a tweener when it comes to Taylor Swift. I'm not a Swiftie. I don't have her music downloaded on my playlist or anything. But if I hear other people, play her music, most of the time I'm like, all right, that's a pretty good song. So, I'm not a mainstream Taylor Swift, song lover, but this one's a bit under the radar. I really like Exile featuring Bon Iver. I think that one is one that is, flies under the radar quite a bit. It's not a mainstream pop hit or anything like that, but that's one I've heard that every time I hear it, I go, all right, that's a good one by Taylor.
This is automatically my favorite episode that will happen all season long because I am a Swiftie, as many other people are. Craig, what is your favorite song that you would give a game ball to?
It's a timely question, Alex. I like it. I would definitely say the words that Travis Kelce doesn't want to hear from T Swift. We are never, ever getting back together. Like ever.
Craig, that was perfect. That was a perfect segue there. I don't have a favorite. I could go anywhere with this. I've been listening to Taylor Swift since I was in 4th grade, but I'll go. I don't know. I'm gonna go with the classic just because it was my first favorite. I'll go our song or Teardrops on My Guitar. Just the OGs before the entire takeover of Taylor Swift. So that's who I will give my game ball to. Moving on from this segment, thank you two for partaking in that. We've got our game of the week. It is the Battle of the North Dakotas. It is University of North Dakota versus North Dakota State coming up. We will break it all down. Before Sam and Craig give their analysis on North Dakota hosting the Bison, let's hear from Missouri Valley Conference reporter Kelly Burke on the meaning of this rivalry in the Peace Garden State.
State bragging rights are on the line this Saturday in Grand Forks as North Dakota hosts North Dakota State in a rivalry that dates all the way back to 1894.
It gets a lot of attention, so there's a lot of noise and a lot of excitement build up to the game, and the crowds are really electric. When you pull into the lot for this game, it's just different. You know, we know it's another conference game and important conference game, but it is different because of the rivalry and all the history between the two institutions. And in a small state like North Dakota, it means a lot to the people, and these universities mean a lot to the people.
For just the third time in the Alerus Center's history, North Dakota will host their arch rival.
Year by year, like the build up to the game, like the atmosphere is just a great feeling, and it just keeps getting more competitive because, I mean, we both don't like each other, and the rivalry just builds on that.
Bubba Schweigert grew up watching his brother play in the game for North Dakota, and now in his second stint in Grand Forks is well versed in the rivalry.
We broke a losing streak against North Dakota State back in the 90s. That was a huge memory. And then there are just so many close games after that, you know, one-score games, and the buildup is one thing that you kind of remember.
The turnover battle will be a major factor. The Bison leading the country in TO margin. Defensively, North Dakota knows defending the quarterback run is something they have to do better than last year. Throwing a Bison offense that is throwing the ball a whole lot more this year and minimizing chunk plays is a priority, especially to 6'7" go-to receiver Zach Mathis.
You have to respect his size, and he has good speed and wiggle for how big a frame he has. So, I mean, just to be able to key in on that is going to be important because, you know, he's able to make big plays at any time just with his height and his ability. So
the Fighting Hawks have plenty of their own weapons, including quarterback Tommy Schuster, who is being asked to get more yards on the ground this season.
He makes a lot of plays when he scrambles out of the pocket. He's a good downfield thrower. He can run too, so we got to protect him when he does that. And I don't know, he's actually my roommate, so it's fun to live with him and protect him as well on the field.
But in this rivalry, the protection has at times extended even to the goalposts.
The year that we broke the streak, you know, and students tore down the goalposts because we were outside at that time and paraded it down University Avenue. You know, we had a game the next week. So on the coach's show or one of the radio show, our head coach at the time was Roger Thomas. He had to plead with the students that, hey, we don't know where our goalposts are. We need them next week. Can you bring them back so we can fix them?
And those goalposts were eventually returned. Less of a concern today because the game is now played inside. Notably, Saturday's contest is already sold out. Cornerback CJ Siegel telling me the team is really looking forward to a visit from 2001 national champion and former UND coaching great Dale Lennon later in the week.
Founded in 1985, the Missouri Valley Football Conference has established a tradition of FCS football excellence. Competing at the highest level of NCAA Division I, student athletes at its institutions demonstrate character, passion, and integrity as they grow as a student, an athlete, and a citizen. The Missouri Valley Football Conference, where leaders are shaped and champions are forged.
Back here on our Week 7 episode of FCS All-In. Thanks for watching. It is time for our Game of the Week segment. North Dakota State versus the University of North Dakota. Craig, I'm going to start with you here. This is just the second time since 2003 that the Fighting Hawks are hosting the Bison. That alone, does that give UND a leg up here?
Well, it's a good point because UND is so good inside the Alerus Center. At home, I mean, you go back a few years, they've won 22 of their last 4, or 22 of their last 24 at the Alerus Center. I just think they're a different team there. Obviously, the momentum of the crowd and on top of the field, the defense especially. I mean, their home and road splits, you know, they're just stopping opposing offenses and really creating turnovers when they're playing at home. Not so much on the road. I just think, yes, the momentum they gain playing at home is a difference maker for UND.
Sam, on the other side of things, North Dakota State just had a stellar offensive performance in their win over Missouri State, 534 yards of total offense. How will that benefit them going into their game against UND, and what will UND have to do to stop their offense?
Yeah, NDSU this year, it's, usually in the past it's been, all right, stop their power run game and you kind of get them, off of their schedule and get them a little uncomfortable. But that's not necessarily the case this year with the Bison. Their power run game is still good, but it's not quite as dominant as it has been. But they're, I guess I could say airing it out. When it comes to the Bison, they are throwing the ball a whole lot more than what they usually have. You compare that to some other offenses like a Western Carolina, they're not, quote unquote, airing it out, but throwing the ball 25 times a game, somewhere around there for NDSU, feels like they are airing it out. And Cam Miller's playing at a really high level this year, very efficient. They're getting vertical with the passing game. He's one of the higher graded quarterbacks in the FCS. And so, I think for UND, it still starts with stopping that power run game, but you also have to be really sound, with your guys in the back end and not let any big plays over top and not let any completions underneath as well.
Greg, for UND, they had a stellar defensive performance, on the other hand, and their win over Western Illinois held them to just under 200 yards of total offense there. How will that give them a leg up in this one?
Yeah, the Bison, I'd still like to see Tamarick Williams, have a larger production, the running back. I think he's big here because, South Dakota State really ran the ball well against UND. And I just think, the Bison can do that. They have the pedigree to do that. Obviously, as Sam mentions, the passing game has really, picked it up this year. Zach Mathis is having, a good run, especially going back to the national championship game, their wide receiver. I just think they need to run the ball against UND, kind of do what South Dakota State did.
Keys to the game. I know you were talking about, both of you, NDSU having a strong run game here. What else do they need to do in order to beat the Fighting Hawks at home, and then vice versa? Sam, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a UND, I think the front seven for the Fighting Hawks needs to hold up, because we talked about NDSU and how much better they are throwing the ball, but they still are going to try to establish that power run game. So I think if you're a UND, you have to hold up strong on the front seven. And then for NDSU, I think it's trying to take the crowd out of it pretty early. The Alara Center in Grand Forks can get really, really loud. And I think if they can go on long sustained drives for NDSU and kind of take the crowd out of it, they're just slowly moving the chains, 4-yard gains on the ground, 5-yard, 6-yard gains. You just kind of slowly take the crowd out of it. But if 3 and out quickly, UND hits one of their trick plays, all of a sudden the crowd is coming unraveled, and you're NDSU, and you're kind of shook a little bit, you're taken aback a little bit, and all of a sudden you're off your game. That could spell trouble if you're a road team at the Alara Center.
Craig, your thoughts?
Yeah, if the Bison secondary can kind of take Bo Belquist, the UND wide receiver, out of rhythm, I think that kind of flusters Tommy Schuster, their quarterback, a little bit. And he's so efficient, but he does really rely on Bo Belquist. At the same time, I think ball control is big here, especially for UND, because you go back to North Dakota State's first national championship season back to 2011, when they win, and that's most of the time, 80% of the time, they're winning time of the possession. When they lose since then, over 50% of those games, those losses, they've been not won time of possessions. I think that's key here. UND can probably do that. At the same time, the Bison are so terrific at controlling time of possession.
It'll be interesting to see one of the oldest rivalries in college football. Super excited to watch this one, and we will break this down as well as a handful of FCS matchups coming up in our Pick'em segment. Don't go away.
At North Dakota State University, you'll find a different kind of education. It's where you'll experience hands-on research and innovative technology. It's where you'll meet students and faculty from all over the world. It's where you'll discover exciting opportunities and still feel right at home. This is North Dakota State University, and this is where you belong. Start your experience at ndsu.edu.
What does it mean to be a leader? At the University of North Dakota, we're here to find out.
It's taking my first solo flight.
Finding new ways to learn.
Rolling up your sleeves.
The world deserves leaders like you. Leaders ready to take the next step and make a difference. Because we lead our own way.
It's time now for our Pick'em segment on our Week 7 episode of FCS All-In. Thanks for watching. Alex Eshelman, Sam Herder, Craig Haley. Let's get right into it, guys. Sam, I'm going to start with you. Albany at New Hampshire. Who has it?
Yeah, this is the first of two CAA matchups we'll touch on between teams that I think are going to be right there in that playoff mix. I like Albany here. I think they do have the front seven, especially the defensive line, to hold back a really explosive New Hampshire offense. Albany they've really done a good job of identifying and really developing really good defensive line talent, and that's certainly the case for Albany this year.
One of your favorite mascots, the Great Danes, Sam.
Yeah.
All right, what are your thoughts, Craig?
Yeah, I mentioned Dylan Kelly earlier in the show for Albany, and he had that huge game last week. At the same time, New Hampshire had a bye, and I think that's always key here going into a big matchup. They're home, they're comfortable, Alex. It's a great quarterback matchup. Obviously, UNH has Dylan Lawby, the terrific running back, all-purpose kind of player. I just think I like UNH at home coming off a bye.
All right, moving on. Elon at Villanova. I'm going to start with you for this one, Craig.
Yeah, Elon's in first place in the CAA, 3-0 top standings, and you know what? They are hard to trust. They're up and down. I think I like Villanova at home with all their offensive weapons, wide receivers that Connor Watkins throws downfield to, all those running backs with the experience. I like Villanova.
Nova, yes or no, Sam?
Yeah, I like Nova as well. Elon is a tough squad. They play really well defensively, but I'm not there when it comes to Elon's offense. On the flip side, I really like Villanova's overall offense. I think they just have more firepower in that, and that's going to be hard to keep up with if you're Elon.
Sticking with you, Sam, for this one. It's Northern Iowa at South Dakota State. Do the Jackrabbits get it done?
Yeah, it's just really hard, in the moment to pick against South Dakota State. I will say, going back to the preseason, the talking point was, if South Dakota State does lose a game, who's it going to come to? Kind of the popular answer was Northern Iowa, because UNI matches up seemingly every year really well with South Dakota State. They seem like they win more often than they lose in Brookings. So I think this will be a closer game than expected, but just, with how South Dakota State's playing, it's just hard to pick against the Jackrabbits.
Being the national champion, the stats just write themselves. And in this one, you go back to 2014, the UNI versus South Dakota State series, starting with the South Dakota State win in 2014. They've rotated wins every time. Now, that means it's UNI's turn to win here, but I'm not saying it. I like the Jackrabbits at home.
All right, the Jackrabbits it is. I'm going to stick with you. You can notice a pattern here, Craig. I'm sticking with you for this one. Chattanooga at Mercer. Who you got?
Great game. So many offensive weapons, including Ty James that Sam mentioned earlier. I think I'm going to go with the quarterback here. Chase Artopias, Chattanooga. He is really pinpoint with that passing. I'm going to go with him leading Chattanooga to a win.
I do think quarterback play will be the difference here because, both teams have great wide receivers, great running backs. I expect another shootout. I just think Chase with Chattanooga, he's going to have another big day just like he did this last week. And I think it's going to be a shootout in my opinion, but I'll lean with the better quarterback in this one.
All right, moving on. And I kind of like this next one because you also not only think of football, but you really think of basketball here as well. That's Davidson at Butler. Sam, who you got in this one?
Yeah, two of the top teams in the Pioneer Football League. I lean Butler here. I like them at their home place, but I also think Butler could probably hit on some explosive plays here, and Davidson isn't necessarily built to come back from a 14, 17-point deficit. So I think Butler can hit on enough explosive plays, give themselves a little bit of wiggle room, and especially with the running clock, Davidson is a run heavy team, and if they fall behind by double digits, it's challenging for them to come back. So I'll go with Butler.
Craig, who gets the dub?
Alex, if they move this game inside to the basketball arena, Hinkle Hall, they could play arena football, but they're going to keep it outdoors, the Butler Bowl. I picked Butler to win at St. Thomas last week. It came down to a goal line stance, 17-10. St. Thomas, just a great PFL team. For some reason, I'm going against Butler this week. They have not stopped the Davidson run game at all the last 2 years. Even though I liked Butler last week, I'm going to go Davidson this time.
Next up, the battle for the Little Brownstein. It is Montana at Idaho, a huge Big Sky matchup. Craig, who do you have coming out with the win here?
Great game. Montana, great rivalry. And Montana, Clifton McDowell has really kind of changed things with their offense now that he's the quarterback. I don't think you can go against the Vandals at home here. This is a game they had circled on the calendar. They won last year at Montana and just saw how much, that just lifted them. I think you have to like the Vandals at home with that crowd.
That's interesting, Craig, because last week you said the Grizz needed to get that win, kind of a prove it win last week. They did that. Idaho also got the win on the road against Cal Poly. Sam, who do you think gets the dub here?
Yeah, it's hard to pick against Idaho in this one. They're just rolling right now. I think it's going to be a phenomenal atmosphere at the Kibbe Dome. It sounds like it's a sellout. I think it's homecoming, and also ESPN2 is going to be there. And I think just with how Idaho is rolling, I think their pass protection is going to be key in this one against a blitz-heavy Montana team. So I'll go with Idaho.
Moving on, Howard at Harvard. Sam, what do you think?
Harvard here, the home team, I favor them a little bit more at home. They're also a really balanced team. I really like how Harvard is looking, really strong on the defensive line, getting good quarterback play. They kind of came onto the national rankings map with their big win against Holy Cross a couple of weeks ago and still are undefeated versus the FCS. So Harvard is a good looking ball team, and I'll choose them at home.
All right, Craig, let's get to you. Howard at Harvard.
Howard's 2-3, but 2 FBS losses by a combined 13 points. That's impressive. And they have a veteran team. Quentin Williams, their quarterback's been around for a long time. I just think Charles DePrima, the quarterback for Harvard, has just been a revelation. How he's just come out of nowhere, being the backup and just taken over. So yeah, the Crimson at home in this one.
Next up, we've got Youngstown State at South Dakota. Who has it? Craig, I'll start with you.
Hard-nosed game. I think it's going to be low-scoring kind of defense. Obviously, Youngstown State could get some pressure here, with their defense. But I go down the South Dakota defense, and everywhere I look, they're having standout performances, one after another. I just like the Coyotes at home with their defense.
Sam, your thoughts?
Yeah, my gut is kind of telling me Youngstown State right now. I don't know. They're a bit up and down. They lost a couple of weekends ago to Northern Iowa, but then they turn around and really hand it to a top 10 Southern Illinois team. And so it's kind of hard to trust Youngstown State week to week. Plus they are on the road. But USD, they kind of start with the power run game, and I think Youngstown State has the front seven to kind of throw them off of their offensive routine. And I'll go Youngstown with the road upset.
We've got the battle of the North Dakotas, UND versus NDSU. Who takes the win here, Sam?
Yeah, I think this is, if UND is going to beat NDSU, it seems like this year is their best opportunity, just because, NDSU might not be as powerful as past years. And UND just plays really well at home, like Craig mentioned earlier on in the show. It's still hard to pick, against the Bison. Maybe I'm looking too much at what South Dakota State did to UND with their power run game, but it just seems that UND's front right now isn't built to beat a team like NDSU. And I think if you can have that power run game like NDSU has shown, that travels well when you're on the road. And so I think the Bison can get a big road dub here. What
do you think, Craig?
UND has been very impressive how tough they've been in recent years. And just, they're always a playoff team. But they haven't really been over the hump in these North Dakota State, South Dakota State games. And very few teams are. But I just think they have to play with a little bit of a different mentality and just be the enforcer here at home. They have a shot, as Sam mentioned, that this, if there's ever going to be a year, this is the one, especially with UND at home. But I tell you what, if Taylor Swift was picking here, her love story would be the Bison. I think the Bison all the way in this one.
It's a love story, baby. Just say yes, Craig. I mean, we could weave Taylor Swift songs in and out of this show for the rest of the year if you guys like. I'm on board. Thank you both so much for your input this week, every week, and we'll be back with you two next Friday. So I appreciate it. All right, guys, we have FCS royalty in the house today for our guest picker segment on our Week 7 episode of FCS All-In. Welcome back to the show, Alex Eshelman. And today, here's the introduction. He's a Northwestern State All-American linebacker, college football Hall of Famer, two-time Super Bowl champion with the New York Giants, and longtime sports broadcaster, Mr. Gary Reasons. Gary, thank you so much for giving us some of your time today. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Alex. Thanks for having me on. I really, and it's a pleasure to be with you. And hey, let's talk some FCS football.
That's right. Before we talk some FCS football, I want to talk about you. What's the biggest life lesson that you took from your time at Northwestern State that you've taken into such an incredible career, both on and off the field, that you've had past college?
There's so many takeaways from football in general. There's a lot of life lessons, but we nicknamed at one point our university as Adversity University. That's just a little joke, but that is something that I did take away from Northwestern State is, hey, you can overcome just about anything, really, be it on the field, be it in the classroom, be it, family, job, whatever. But having the ability to be strong and strong-minded and overcome adversity, something that I really took to heart when I was at Northwestern. And I think that was something that we all did as players, and there were a lot more takeaways, but that one stood out for me.
Now, tell me what you're doing now with Stats Perform. So you go to but you go to a new FCS campus every single week to personally give out the FedEx Ground National Weekly Honor Award. What's been your favorite part about this experience this year?
It's been tremendous. It really has. So I host and MC the FCS National Award Show every year in Frisco. So that's been a pleasure of mine. But this year we've expanded with our partner FedEx Ground to actually go on campus. We select every week. We have an offensive, defensive, special team, freshman, and team of the week. And then I go to one of those. And so I don't know where I'm going every week. So whatever happens on Saturday kind of determines where I'm going to go. And Craig and I collaborate. Craig Haley, our editor with the Stats Perform, he and I collaborate on where we're going to go, and it's just been a blast. And I tell you, the reception from the campuses has been tremendous. The head coaches all love what we're doing. The sports information guys, they really love being a part of this, getting some recognition. And it's great to bring in a partner who is focused on looking at student athletes and giving them a potential career post their playing days, because it's a career opportunity. So everything aligns, and it is really good to be able to do this. And for myself as a former FCS player, it's good for me to go and give back to the FCS community in such a great way. If you look on our podcast, our channel, FCS Delivered on YouTube, you'll see the videos and you'll see all the interviews that I have with individual players, coaches, university presidents, athletics directors. All of that is on our YouTube channel, FCS Delivered. Just search there on YouTube and you'll find it. It's pretty fun. And it's really just a lot of stuff that is just focusing on shining a brighter spotlight on FCS. Follow me on Twitter at Gary Reasons, and we'll have a good time here. You'll get all the notifications. I comment on most everything that we post. So it's a lot of fun. It's just fun to be engaged and with all the fan bases and all the universities. And there's 128 universities. I'm not going to get to all of them just yet, but we're going to go out. I've gone 6 visits so far. This was my 6th visit. Just finished yesterday. Got home last night, and we'll have 6 more for this season, and then I may have one early in December that I'll go on, and I think that's going to happen. But that's kind of what our year's been.
Well, I can't wait to follow along. Last question before we get to our guest picker segment. Biggest piece of advice that you would give to FCS athletes that want to have success past college, like the success that you've had?
Yeah, it's all one thing. And I took this away from college, from my days in the NFL, and really something. And I'll tell about one guy, you'll know his name, Bill Belichick. Bill was our linebacker coach and defensive coordinator with the Giants when I was there. You can tell why Bill was is a great coach, and what his leadership has been with his success. His greatest attribute, and the thing that he does, and he taught me, and he taught all of us, is to prepare. Preparation. You've got to prepare. And if you have something that you're trying to achieve, you've got to put the time in, put the effort in, put the work in, but you have to prepare. And if you do so, you're going to be successful. You're going to be able to overcome whatever obstacles there are, and just be able to be focused on it. But preparing, I think, is something that I think is one of my greatest takeaways.
I love that, Gary. And no pun intended, but are you prepared for our pick'em segment next?
I'll give it a shot here. I'll see what I can do.
You're being humble. I know you know this league inside and out. All right, let's start with our first game. Albany at New Hampshire. Who you got, Gary?
Well, I just came from Albany. They were our segment this week. We had our national defensive player of the week there, Dylan Kelly, and he had a great game. Defensively, the Danes are playing very well. I'm going to take Albany in this one. They're fired up. Greg Gattuso has really got that team playing well. New Hampshire's been hit and miss a little bit. I think that the Great Danes get this one on the road.
Sam Craig and I love the mascot, the Great Danes. We like to bring them up as much as we can. All right, next up, Elon Villanova.
Wow. Well, the Phoenix now at the Wildcats. I think the Wildcats at home. They've got Nova's got a decent quarterback there in Connor Watkins, and I think he's solid. He's a solid quarterback. So give them the nod there at home, Villanova.
Connor Watkins gets a shout out. I love it. All right, Northern Iowa at South Dakota State.
Northern Iowa at South Dakota State. Where did I put that one at here? I do. Yeah, I'm definitely going to go with South Dakota State. #1 team in the Stats Perform top 25 poll. Been there all season long. I'm riding that horse to the end, and their running back Isaiah Davis. He's a horse, and so he's playing pretty well. So sorry, Northern Iowa, but I'm taking the South Dakota State here.
Hard not to root for the reigning FCS champs. I got you, Gary. All right. Chattanooga at Mercer.
Chattanooga, wow. They had a crazy loss in that West Carolina ball game, 52-50, and they're going on the road here to Mercer, who's won their last 2. But guess what? I'm taking Chattanooga. I think Chattanooga is going to be resilient. Look for the Mocs to win this one.
I love it. I also love the name Chattanooga. It's a fun one to say. Next up, Davidson at Butler.
Well, we know one thing about Davidson. They can score points. They've had some big lopsided wins, and they've won their last 3 games. And so I'm going to take the Wildcats in this one. Davidson on the road.
Davidson it is. All right, next up, the battle for the Little Brownstein. Montana at Idaho. Who you got, Gary?
Well, you can put the picture in that I sent to you just before this of me holding the Little Brown Stein in this show. So somehow you might be able to make it in there. I was at Idaho, where it's currently at now, and I don't think it's leaving Idaho. I think the Vandals get it. I think Coach Hawk and the Grizz are going to be great, but Coach Eck and the Vandals at home, they're solid. And Giovanni McCoy at quarterback, he's solid. He's gaining more experience from his freshman year, which we had him down in Frisco. I've met him, and he's smart with the football this year. I think that the Vandals get this game in the Big Sky, and I think Idaho at home.
Giovanni McCoy is electric, not to mention their wide receiver duo and Hayden Hatton and Jermaine Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
Really exciting to watch. Next up, Howard at Harvard. What do you think, Gary?
Yeah, MEAC at the Ivy League, and Harvard is really setting things on fire here. I think that their offense is moving the ball pretty well. They're undefeated. I think they're going to stay that way. Harvard and the Crimson Roll.
Keeping it moving. Youngstown State at South Dakota.
Well, South Dakota is pretty powerful. I went up there a couple of weeks back, and they had a couple of solid wins. Obviously, against North Dakota State, when you win that football game, that is a tremendous calling card that you have. I think that backed up by the game that they had against Murray State. Coach Nielsen has that team playing very well. They're solid, and they're going to be tough at home. So I think that South Dakota wins against Youngstown State at home.
All right, the Dakotas get the win this week. Okay, this is our game of the week now. Speaking of the Dakotas, North Dakota State at the University of North Dakota. Who gets the dub here, Gary?
Well, University of North Dakota, they've won 22 of the last 24, inside what's called the Alara Center, right? So that is their home base. I think that North Dakota State goes down again. I think North Dakota at home is going to be a little bit more than the Bison can handle in this one. So I'm taking North Dakota.
Follow Gary on also social media. And again, FCS Delivered. Be sure to watch all of his adventures throughout this football season. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
We'll be back with more here on FCS All-In. Stick with us. We'd like to dedicate this week's show to Northwestern State football student athlete Ronnie Caldwell Jr. as he passed away this week. Our heartfelt condolences and prayers go out to Ronnie's family, friends, teammates, classmates, and the entire Northwestern State campus.